All right, great.
So.
Okay, so welcome everybody to the afternoon session of this great conference. Our first speaker for this session is Carson Sievert, and Carson will talk to us about styling Shiny and R Markdown with Bootstrap, lib, and thematic. Carson, please take it.
All right, well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to show you some recent work that I've been doing on this Bootstrap lib and thematic packages. So if you'd like to return to the slides for today, I have them up at bit.ly/r-pharma 2020, all lowercase. And to start off, this is mainly going to be about the Bootstrap lib package and some very recent progress that we've made on it. So this package makes it a whole lot easier to style HTML content from R for Shiny apps, for R Markdown documents, for HTML outputs, and really any HTML page that wants to be styled by Bootstrap CSS. And then I'll also briefly mention thematic, which is a package that simplifies theming of R plots, targeted specifically at ggplot2, lattice, and base R graphics. So both of these packages have package down sites up at the moment. I actually just recently did a whole big update to the Bootstrap lib package down site. And these packages are not yet on CRAN, but we're getting very close. I'm hoping in another month or so, both of these packages will be on CRAN. And if you have the most recent version of Bootstrap lib from GitHub on master, as well as Shiny from master on GitHub, you can start using BS theme from the Bootstrap lib package with Shiny like this, where you can pass this BS theme object to the theme argument of any of these page layout functions like fluid page, navbar page, bootstrap page. All of these page layouts have this theme argument that can now accept this new special object. And you may already be familiar with this theme argument and using it with the Shiny themes package, or providing your own custom build of Bootstrap CSS to essentially do a very similar thing to customize the flavor of Bootstrap CSS that comes with these page layout functions. But this R interface, this BS theme object, is way more powerful than these other alternatives. So by default, if you don't specify a version, this is going to upgrade your app to Bootstrap 4. So this version argument for the moment defaults to this 4+3 special version string, which means Bootstrap 4 plus some extra added compatibility for Bootstrap 3. So there's a whole bunch of breaking changes that Bootstrap made from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 4, and that's why it's been taking us so long to get to this point. But we've provided this extra sort of compatibility layer where you can start using Bootstrap 4, but still rely on some important Bootstrap 3 features. So this will help most existing as well as new Shiny apps and our Markdown documents upgrade to Bootstrap 4. But you might have some custom widgets in your Shiny app or your document that require Bootstrap 3. And in that case, Bootstrap lib also has support for Bootstrap 3, so you can set this version argument to 3 if you really need to use Bootstrap 3. And you can continue using these Bootswatch themes like you're used to using from Shiny themes. So the BS theme function has a Bootswatch argument where you can provide whatever theme you have been using or want to continue using. But now if you use Bootstrap 4 with Bootswatch, that also comes with some new additional themes that are pretty nice. So a couple examples are Solar and Minty. Bootstrap lib also comes with this BS theme preview function. We'll see more about this later on. But for now, I just want to point out that this is a function that's useful for getting a quick preview of how your theme object will have an impact on basically anything that you can create with Shiny. So this demo app sort of tries to cram in like every possible input widget that we provide in Shiny, as well as things like tab set panels, a navbar page. Also includes things like plots and tables and notifications and action buttons, and tries to stuff as much as it can into this demo app. And so this BS theme, in addition to a version and a Bootswatch theme, you can also provide the main colors and fonts for this application in a simple way. So you can provide a background color, a foreground color, and a primary color. And now I have a completely different dark mode theme for this application. So you'll notice just these two settings of background and foreground end up setting new defaults for hundreds of different color styles, and will inform new defaults for everything from a slider input to a select input to these tab set panels, as well as the navbar page. Basically anything that doesn't come with maybe opinionated CSS rules that clash with Bootstrap will work with this sort of thing. And I don't recommend like setting something like so dark, like putting the background equal to black or the foreground equal to white. You might want to use muted versions of like a dark and a white, or use well-designed color palettes like this material dark mode. These color codes are derived from this website that Google has for a material dark mode theme. And just to sort of set some expectations about where you can expect BS theme to work, it's similar in effect to what you're used to with Shiny themes, where Shiny themes or a custom Bootstrap CSS file would work so long as you have HTML that doesn't fundamentally clash with that Bootstrap CSS style. And you might have noticed if you've ever used Shiny themes or had a custom CSS file, it doesn't quite work with all of Shiny. There might be things like slider input or select input that has sort of opinionated CSS styles that don't actually respect the sort of theming decisions of your overall Bootstrap CSS. But now, since we're moving towards a world where we're actually defining the theme on the R side of things, we can actually have the markup that these things generate actually respect these new defaults and actually have things work in a way that you would expect, where, if I set just a background, a foreground, and an accent color, then the slider input or select input can pick up on all of those new values. And so the next release of Shiny, you can expect basically all of it to work well with BS theme. Also, we're working on adding support to our Markdown's HTML document and all of sort of the components that you can fit into an HTML document, as well as the DT package and other popular HTML widget packages. So if you're excited about this and you have your own sort of custom Shiny components, or you have an HTML widgets package, check out this link here, which has some documentation on how you can make your component themable based on this BS theme interface. And since this all works based on Bootstrap CSS, this fundamentally can't affect things that are not rendered by the browser. So for example, plots that you generate in R and provide to a plot output. Setting a BS theme in and of itself can't affect the default styles of R plots, but you can use this thematic package to translate, essentially translate your CSS into new defaults for your R plots. So to give you an example of how this looks, here I might have a fluid page with a custom BS theme to set this dark green background, as well as some other styles to influence this tab set rendering for looking at different plots. But those styles don't end up having any effect on this R plot, which was generated by the R server, and then is just displayed inside of the web application. But I could simply set thematic Shiny before these plots are generated. And what that will do is it does some magic to basically say, have all of the R plots generated by the Shiny app derive new styling defaults based on the CSS properties of the plot output container. So that things just kind of more or less magically work based on the CSS settings. And I do want to briefly talk about the thematic package in general, because this package can be useful more generally than just specifically talking about a Shiny setting where we have Bootstrap CSS on the page. Thematic provides a similar sort of simple interface for theming ggplot2 and lattice and base R graphics. And you can enable thematic by calling this thematic on function and then using these similar simple settings of a background color, foreground color, accent color, and font settings. And that will change basically all of the defaults for ggplot. This works the best with ggplot2, but you can also use it with base and lattice graphics. And another nice big feature of thematic is that if R doesn't have the font installed already, thematic will actually automatically detect that situation. And if the font is a Google font, thematic will automatically install it for you prior to producing the plot. So, and the defaults for this thematic on and thematic Shiny is to try to automatically detect from the container for the plot what the relevant styles are. So this works the best inside of a Shiny render plot context, because in that situation, since we have a server-client relationship, we can know exactly what the CSS properties are for that plot's container. So this can actually, thematic's auto-theming can actually work with any CSS. It doesn't have to come through a bootstraplib BS theme. You can write your CSS however you want to write it. And this auto-theming just works because we know exactly what the relevant CSS is. But this auto can also work in other contexts, like R Markdown HTML documents. In that case, we don't know exactly what the CSS properties are for the plot's container. But as long as you're doing your theming with BS theme, then we know essentially what the intention is for the styling of plot output containers. So thematic auto-theming can work in HTML document as long as you're using this BS theme. And you can also use this auto-theming inside of RStudio as well, and it'll detect your RStudio theme and use the relevant background, foreground, and accent colors in your RStudio theme. So, and I could keep talking about thematic and how it allows you to set new defaults for things like qualitative and sequential color scales. But I do want to come back to bootstraplib because there's some more exciting things to be said about that. And let's come back to this BS theme preview function from bootstraplib. And I want to point out that, again, you can provide it a theme object, but what it also does by default is it overlays a BS themer on top of the demo application, which allows you to interactively do real-time theming of these main colors and fonts. So let me show you a video of that, where I start with a dark material theme, but then I could change the background color to this blue color, change the primary color to this shade of orange. And then I could see how these real-time changes to the theme have affected the styling of these input widgets. Then I could look at this other page, which has some other input widgets. And then notice that since thematic is enabled in this demo app, thematic will also respect these real-time theming changes, as long as you're changing fonts. The basic colors are the primary color. These theming changes will be respected by things like DT, also things like progress bars and Shiny, these modals, Shiny show notification will derive defaults from these theming changes. Things like file inputs will reflect these new styles. And then there's another section in this themer for changing the font families. So I could change the heading font to Arial. I could set the code font to something else. And then there's another section for some sort of global options in Bootstrap as well. And as I mentioned, this like background, foreground, primary, these sort of main color settings cascade to hundreds of other theming defaults that you can override using Bootstrap Sass variables. So, and you can provide those Sass variable names as arguments to this BS theme. So I could say progress bar background, set this specific progress bar color to orange if you would like to. And if you're wondering at this point, what is a Sass variable? You can think of Sass, which is an entire language in itself, as a more powerful way to write CSS. So one of the main features of Sass is to provide Sass variables, which kind of provide high-level controls over CSS, allowing someone to basically, change one variable value, like a primary color, and have that propagate to potentially hundreds of different CSS styling roles. So that's the main way to theme using BS theme, is to set Bootstrap Sass variables. And then the CSS compilation is managed for you magically at runtime. So with that in mind, if you're, well, before we talk a little bit more about Sass, I also want to mention that Bootstrap 4 comes with some nice utility classes that allow us to handle common yet fickle styling issues like spacing, borders, colors, layout, and various other things. So you might have noticed with the tab set panel, you don't get any padding between the tab and the body content. And you also don't get any borders around the body content. So one thing you can do with utility classes is to add some special classes to a tab panel and say, add some padding to the body content so that this text moves from here down here. And then also complete the border around this tab panel so that it looks like we've actually contained the content there. And then you can more generally sort of combine the power of Sass with the power of Bootstrap utility classes to do something like make all tabs horizontally justified. So this is adding an additional Sass rule that will make any element with a nav class, it will basically add this special justified content center class to any navigation. And then that will make this tab set panel sort of horizontally centered. You can also keep going with this idea and create custom themable components. So you could have an R function generating some custom HTML content, and then you could use that component inside something like a fluid page. and have some special Sass rules to style this HTML markup. So I'm just going to breeze over this because I'm kind of running out of time, I think. But you could have Sass code that derives defaults from Bootstrap Sass variables, so that you could have a card like this that can respond to the different main color settings of your theme. Another exciting thing that landed just this morning in the master of Shiny is this ability to set the current theme server side after the initial page is rendered, which could be useful for implementing something like a dark mode switch for your application. So if you're interested in learning more about how that works, check out this link here. Also, this is also hasn't really landed at this point. This is experimental. It's still in progress. But the hope is that with HTML documents, you can basically provide the arguments to a BS theme to this theme parameter and use bootstraplib that way with R Markdown. And then if you want to do something like add additional rules to the Bootstrap CSS, then you can do so this way. And in summary, you can use bootstraplib to style HTML content for Shiny and R Markdown, and use thematic for easier theming of R plots. And thank you.
Thanks, Carson. I appreciate that fantastic talk. Since we are out of time, we did have some questions, 3 questions. I'm going to send those over to the Slack channel for you to address.
Sounds good.
All right.